What up, though? What's going on? I want to welcome you from Half Court. I am Sean Murphy, and today we got to talk about the Pistons' big win over the Golden State Warriors last night. The Detroit Pistons, one of the worst teams in the NBA, sweeping the NBA champions this season. What the is going on here, man? This team came out with a lot of fire and intensity last night. And going into Golden State, even though they didn't have Steph Curry, the Warriors still have the NBA best record at home at 17-2. At least that was the record going into this game. However, if you were watching the game, it was pretty apparent that the Pistons weren't afraid of the Warriors by any means. In fact, anytime the Warriors tried to push them around, the Pistons didn't allow it and they pushed back. One instance in particular that stuck out to me is the Isaiah Stewart shove with Draymond Green. Draymond does this little shove. Isaiah Stewart says, "I ain't taking any of that," and just says, "Get away from me, man." I was laughing when I saw that because that's authentically Isaiah Stewart. And the thing is that a lot of people, they're just going to see him for that. But the reality is that there's so much more to his game. Isaiah Stewart is perhaps one of the most improved players in the entire association this year, but definitely on the Pistons, in my personal opinion. You've seen his ability to handle the ball, to put it on the deck, his ability to shoot the three. We've seen how consistent and reliable he's become as a three-point threat. And he's been one of Detroit's most consistent. Even though last night he was 1 for 7, he's still been super reliable defending on the perimeter, and he's merged into that role perfectly, which has allowed Jalen Duren to go to work in the paint. And oh my gosh, even though Isaiah Stewart didn't have it going shooting wise, Jalen Duren went 100% from the field. This kid is insane. 19-year-old Jalen Duren was not scared at all going into the Chase Center and walked out there and finished with 18 points, 11 boards, 5 of them on the offensive end, and only 2 personal fouls. That's exactly what you want. The fact that you can have your rookie center go and play 30-plus minutes in the Chase Center, that's extremely impressive. And the fact that he's doing that in January, man, oh my gosh, this kid has so much potential. I honestly just wonder what the true ceiling is of Jalen Duren, because his athleticism, his IQ, his work ethic, everything that he has, I'm not putting limits on that guy. I'm just not. And speaking of a guy that we just can't seem to put limits on, Bojan Bogdanovic has continued to be extremely consistent and to be a walking bucket. I saw reports from Jake Fisher from Yahoo Sports that apparently the Pistons want a good young player and a first-round pick for Bojan. That's not a ridiculous return to ask for at all, because the way that he's producing for this team, it would have to be a good reason to part with him if they were to do so at the trade deadline. Another guy who had a phenomenal game and I thought really made a statement not only to the fans, but also to the entire league that he's here to stay, is a guy named Saddiq Bey, adding to his extensive list for his young career of clutch shots that he's had, hitting that buzzer-beating game winner to beat the Golden State Warriors, but also what he was doing throughout the game as well. This guy finished with 17 points. He shot 4 of 10 from beyond the arc. This guy was able to get a couple steals as well. Saddiq's been really valuable on the defensive end of late. And really the big thing has just been his consistent presence on that bench unit. The fact that we can have 2 guys in Alec Burks and Saddiq Bey come off our bench and combine for 30-plus points is something that's huge, because the Pistons didn't have that at the beginning of this season. They didn't have people that could consistently produce. So the fact that, Dwayne Casey even said himself after the game that he views Saddiq as a 6th starter, that he can go to him and that he can have him available and to have that type of important role as well. Man, the future is just insanely bright for Saddiq, especially if he continues to embrace whatever's given to him, and if he can continue to quickly adapt the way he has as well, because Saddiq could have very much viewed going to the bench as a demotion. He could have been less engaged, but the reality is, ever since he's gone to the bench, he's fully embraced the role, and it's helped the team ever since. They've been objectively a better basketball team since Saddiq has made that move to the bench. The biggest lesson that you can learn in this league, and it's something that Saddiq Bey has done in strides, is that if you stay ready, if you stay consistent, if you put in the work, eventually it's gonna pay off. And Saddiq saw that payoff in dividends last night. Holy shot was awesome. And not only is this an impressive win in the sense that they went out and beat the defending champions, finished the season sweep on the defending champions, and did so on their home court, only giving them their third loss of the entire season. Whether they have Steph Curry or not, that's insane. The fact that the Pistons were able to do that and to do so in dramatic fashion, you absolutely love to see. But this team's getting better now. Like, if you actually look at the grand scheme, I know they got off that really long losing streak, a couple weeks ago. So everyone, saw that long streak in December and just assumes that Detroit doesn't ever win games. But they're 3-3 in their last 6. This isn't like a team that is just, stalled and doesn't make any progress or isn't competing. These guys are fighting like hell. And if you actually look at the last couple of weeks of basketball, this team is getting better. This team is improving. And if you even look at this team from last year, they have about double the win total they do right now to what they had at this time last year. And that's without Cade Cunningham in the lineup. The other thing, too, even though he's kind of having a little bit of a struggling point and maybe hit his rookie wall, Jayden Ivy just still has moments where he looks incredibly impressive. I mean, just look at this blow by against the Warriors here last night. His ability to have that extension, those long strides to quickly blow past defenders. Jason Tim for the Volume said that those long strides remind him of a young Dwayne Wade. And that's exactly what I see as well. Even my buddy Jack Kelly went and did some research the other day, and he found that his rookie stats, about in 36 games in, are near identical to a young Russell Westbrook. And if that's what his game is, no one's going to complain about that because Russell Westbrook is a damn good player. The difference is whether or not Jayden Ivy can, unlike Russell Westbrook, evolve his game to include that perimeter shot as well. We've seen that it's clearly something that Jayden Ivy really values. It's something that's part of his game. We've seen that he's even starting to, implement that mid-range game as well, which is something that can really take his game to the next level, because once you are that 3-level type scorer, they have to respect you at each level. And that way they can't just defend you on assuming that you're going to go to the rim. They have to respect your jump shot. That way, opening up more opportunities and making you way more dangerous. And, that's going to be the ultimate thing. I still think the world of the kid. I think he's absolutely shown a lot of progress. And I think both him and Jalen Duren have performed above expectations for what we expected their rookie season. I mean, we thought that Jayden Ivy could average like 15, 5, and 5, like at some point, like maybe by the end of his rookie year. But the fact that he's doing that right now is still really impressive. And, the fact that he has Killian back in the lineup with him as well is something that's definitely going to help. Speaking of impressive, Killian Hayes back in your first game from suspension, and you dish out 13 assists with 0 turnovers. I know a lot of people, myself included, are looking at guys like Tyrese Halliburton, Tyrese Maxey, a lot of people from your draft class, and are looking past yourself because of the play of, of these first 2 years. But the reality is, if you look at what Killian Hayes is doing right now, the guy is a stud. And if you look at the comparison that Troy Weaver even made when he drafted Killian Hayes, the player that he had in mind was a Goran Dragic type player. A guy that might not go out and be your number one offensive guy, might not be the guy that gets you a bucket every single night, but he gets you a bucket when you need it. He gets you assists when you need it. He's a valuable playmaker. And his prime, a really stout defender. And if Killian Hayes is even just Goran Dragic for the Detroit Pistons, that is immense value. I mean, even Goran Dragic, when he was at his last stretch of really being at his ultimate powers, helped lead the Miami Heat to the finals in the bubble. I mean, this is a guy who's insanely valuable. He might not have had the opportunity to show it throughout a ton of his career because he didn't always get to play on great teams, but Goran Dragic was a bucket. Goran Dragic was a general. He could lead the court. He could manipulate things on both ends of the court. Insanely smart, clever player. And if that's what Killian Hayes is, I mean, sign me up for that every day of the week. Even if that's your backup point guard too, hell yeah. And when you're talking about wanting to see signs of life in a rebuild and wanting to see, like the types of progress that fans are talking about, look no further than these types of games. Again, even though this team is shorthanded, the fact that the Pistons were able to handle the Warriors not once but twice this season, they were able to keep it extremely competitive and ultimately came through in the clutch in crucial minutes in the fourth quarter. This is a type of win that can give a young team confidence. This is a type of win that can be a building block this season, which therefore is a building block going into to the future. And by the way, I don't want to keep ragging on this point, but people come to me all the time and say Dwayne Casey needs to get fired, how he's the problem, how the Pistons aren't going to go anywhere as long as he's in the organization. And people always say he needs to be fired. What don't you see? What are you talking about? The difference between Dwayne Casey and other coaches on bad teams that are in development stages. I keep going back to the Houston Rockets as an example, and I do it for a reason, because look at Stephen Silas. This is a guy who was brought in to the Houston Rockets organization because he was known for his poise. He was known for being even-keeled. Look at this guy at his brink. The other night, they're down by 23, and Stephen Silas just comes out and is getting super angry and gets ejected and has to get to the point where his assistant coaches are holding him back. This isn't his character. This is unlike him. And when you see this from coaches, it's either a sign that they're feeling the heat and the pressure, or they're trying to galvanize their team. There's no galvanizing this Houston Rockets team. Stephen Silas knows that. Eric Gordon just the other night came out and said, there's been no improvement this season. What are you talking about? The fact that Stephen Silas and Eric Gordon can tell that, I mean, that's a guy clearly feeling the heat. That's the difference. And the fact that Dwayne Casey's staying even keel, and the fact that in return, his players are still sticking to the plan, sticking to his message, and are still actively playing hard on a night-to-night basis and producing wins like this. That's what you want to see from a young team in a development season. But what did you think of the Pistons win over the Warriors? Do you think I'm crazy? Let me know in the comment section down below. But that's going to do it today, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will catch you guys next time from Half Court. Be sure you subscribe.